Hey everyone, my name is Lachlan, and on behalf of the entire INC team, we just want to say welcome, and we're so glad that you're here and you're going to get to see a snapshot of all that God did during our INC Conference 2026. But before we jump into it, we want to make sure that you know about in 2027, there is room for you to be at our conference. We all know that there's nothing like being in the room, and we don't want you to miss out on all that God is doing. So if you call INC home, if you go to any of our churches internationally or here in Australia, make sure that you're there. If you're a pastor, a leader, part of a team, we want to make sure you're there. So there is family discounts, there's group discounts, and all of those amazing things. And we cannot wait to see you in Brisbane, Australia in July next year. So go register now, and we pray that this message would bless you today.
Welcome. This is, yes, as Pastor Ross said, a conversation, and slightly suspicious it might just be me doing some management of the banter between the two on the far left over here. But
I actually have an issue I'd like to bring up with Mark. Is this a good time for that right now?
It's a great, where two or three are gathered.
Yeah, there's something I'd like to...
He is American, so let's keep the volume down.
I have some things I'd like to share about Australians. Is this the right time for that as well? Is that possible?
Go
Absolutely.
for it, I'm a Kiwi.
I'll be whoever's side is winning.
We're not going to talk about sides winning today after last night, but...
Are those the New South Wales supporters?
That is, even a broken clock is right twice a day, so well done, guys. Hey, let's jump into a conversation. We've got 45 minutes to lunch, and you don't want to stop Australians from their food, but we thought we'd have a conversation around a few things. This theme of this conference around the dreaming, and there's been amazing moments of impartation and of the divine downloads into people's lives, but as Pastor Jeff just showed, more than the dream, you need to put wheels to that dream. And long after you get the dream, there's the walking out of that dream, the carrying of the dream, there's hard moments of the dream, and then there's the dream that we pass on from generation to generation. And so in amongst all these big moments, we want to have a conversation around how we carry that through the daily moments as well. I thought I'd start this morning on calling. I think calling is an amazing one. Most people would be in this room not because of what the positional prestige nor the money that it offered you, but because of calling. First and foremost, a call to know our God. First and foremost, and always, to know Him. But second, to do great things for Him. I remember the moment of calling for me was at a house party after school. Again, this was before I was sold out for God, let's say. And me and my mate, we'd known each other since we were 4. And I remember we were around the side of this house, both very intoxicated. He's spewing his guts up. And in between vomits, he looks up and he says, "We're going to be pastors." And then he vomits in the gutter again in that moment. But in that moment, there was that spiritual resonance. And sometimes he finds you in the desert, sometimes he finds you in the gutter. But either way, the call comes and the call can sustain. And the Bible says, remember your first love. It says, consider your calling. That initial call is important and it can sustain. And so I want to hear a few stories around calling. Pastor Mark, if we start with you and your journey, and over the conference you've mentioned that you were a lawyer, and that was something of a position that your family was going to, and you had almost like a burning bush moment that caused you to go against everything that your father worked for, and then go back to Malaysia and start something there. And so to do that, I'm imagining that wasn't just a small whisper, not a personal desire, not emotional manipulation, but there had to be a calling. Can you tell us a bit about that, the burning bush moment for you?
Yeah, it was extremely significant. It was in a room in the Gold Coast, actually. And I wasn't in between vomits, but I felt like vomiting after. And it was genuinely an overwhelming, unexpected interruption to a journey that was not heading in that direction. And I think that's what happens when God arrests you sometimes. He can literally flip you, like, Saul of Tarsus went from persecuting Christians to writing 2/3 of the New Testament. So I think for me, it was so overwhelming. For 2 or 3 days after, I remember feeling like a genuine second skin, like it was incredible. It was tangible. And once that lifted, because it does lift, then you're like, what did I just sign up for? I've just decided to sell my house, buy a one-way ticket to an Islamic country without a visa to start a church. Oh, Jesus. And, but I'll tell you, there are moments in that first few years, you look back on that moment, and that you can call it a burning bush, you can call it a encounter, you can call it a calling moment. But I think having that reference, like a memorial stone of, I don't feel good and I'm struggling, but I know I'd have to lie to myself to deny what God did then. It becomes an anchor that you can hold on to. And I think we need that periodically, to be honest. I do anyway. I don't know about everyone else, but because I think God in His grace does give you those if you seek it.
I completely agree, and I can resonate with that too. In the moments where it's hard, you have this altar built that you can go back to, where it's already built, it's already established by His word, and so no matter what's happening, you go back to that call. Pastor Paul, for you as well, 1991, I think for you went to New Zealand. Can you tell us a bit about that call, but also how that call has sustained you through the longevity of your ministry? If there's any major moments where you had to go back to that to remind yourself of this is why we do it.
Yeah, I think constantly you got to go back to whether it was a defined God call or it was a God nudge. I think we are all called to different things, and sometimes the weight of the call needs an absolute God divine moment. For me, that happened first when I was 13. I was on a bike going to school early one morning, and my mates were telling me about what they wanted to do, and for the first time I knew I was called to build the church. And so I've often gone back to that. Same with the birth of life in 1991. I had 3 nights where I was in New Zealand and I couldn't sleep, and I felt like God say, you need to go back to New Zealand. Would you go back to New Zealand, rather? It needs leadership, and it needs you to be there. And mentioned that to Marie. She wasn't sure she was Australian, but over the next day or two, it was kind of like, yeah, this is God. And so we left Australia, moved to New Zealand with 3 kids, 5 and under. And again, our senior pastor said we can't finance it because we're in a building project. So we made a decision that we had $4,000 in the bank from a car we sold. That's all we had. And we decided we would move countries, birth, and even if that means getting a job, which it did, we would do that, only to have our senior pastor a little time later say, God spoke to us and we're going to fund it for the first year. And after 4 months, we were able to say, we don't even need it, though we'd like it. But we knew they were in a building project and God's our supply line. So we just made that call. So I think that's what it is. Now we're in that call. All we need is a nudge. And sometimes if you don't know where you're going, you need a God call. And sometimes you've got to go hard and go deep because of the distractions around you. But once you get the God call, then you need a God nudge.
Amazing. Ben, slightly twist on the same question for you. Yesterday in the masterclass, you said your yes was naive, as in you didn't know everything that would come from that. And I think that's God's trick He does for everybody, right? You know, there's going to be the palace, Joseph. I'm not telling you about the pit. I'm not telling you about the prison. Just say yes. And I'd like you to comment on it, because it seems like, as I hear calling stories from INC, the early days, and some of this where you go on a dime. Whereas now the next generation are weighing up money, sustainability, there's compliance. It seems harder to just go from your calling and what you've said yes in your naivety to. What would be a great danger from what you've seen in the next generation saying yes to calling?
Yeah, it's second generation money. I think the studies around generational wealth transfer is pretty sobering in the world. Money doesn't transfer real well. By the third generation, most of it's lost. 75% by the second generation. What we talked about yesterday was the call of God is really, for me, an obedience issue. It's that it's just obedience above everything. I'm just going to be obedient, so obedience. But what happens is when you say yes to the Lord when you're young, your yes is genuine, it's real, it's authentic, and super naive, and not as costly as the yes 30 years later is still going to be. My point is, when I say yes, Lord, I'm all in, God. I don't have any money in the bank, really. I have no reputation. I've got no building. I've got no staff this is affected by. I'm like, yes, Lord, everything. But what the harder part is 20, 30 years down the road, you have to say yes continually. But now I'm saying yes, like taking massive risks, saying yes, stepping out of the boat. But now I actually have money in the bank, I have a reputation, I got a whole staff. Like, if this doesn't work out, this doesn't go well. And I find now that my yes now it's as genuine as my yes when I was younger, but I'm way more aware of the cost. And so there's a different level of maturity with your yes as you get older. The second generation, and the pastor that was before, brilliant, by the way, part of my concern with this next generation is we are, and my own kids as well. Somebody said this, I saw a reel that was like, when I was 10, I was telling my parents, look, I think our hotel has a pool. She said, my 10-year-old, what are we doing after the Eiffel Tower? Like, the point being is like, we're just excited there was a pool. My point is this, is we're setting our kids up for success. They're not going through the same things we're going through. But what he was talking about this morning, there's a level of faith and risk. When I don't know how it's going to work out, all I have is a word from God, and I better go find that grit and faith. And so the next generation, we're giving them buildings, and we should. We're giving them buildings, and they have finances, and we've given them structures, and they have systems, and we've done all this type of stuff. But we got to make sure they don't lose that thing that just says, no matter the cost, whatever you say, Jesus, I'm all in on this thing. I don't need a salary. If I, like the thought, you possibly going to get a job, there's a ton of church planners that I don't think would actually go get a job because of the call of God that says, I am going to reach this city and obey God no matter what the cost, even if. It's always like, what's the salary? What's the packages? Like, and so, I don't know, that's a big rambling thing. But I listen to these guys, I legitimately listen to these guys that have done it like this, and I think, okay, that next generation coming up, somehow I love that we're giving them everything we're giving them. We got to not lose that thing right there. That's just like, if this doesn't work out, and no matter, I'll go live in a little shed somewhere because God spoke to me about this. So,
I think the reality is we've got to ask ourselves, what is going to take place because of our faith? So we have people that have a word from God step out, they're called to lead something, and then we become a part of it as leaders, and then it's kind of like, well, what is going to take place because of my faith? So I am under a canopy, but therefore we've got to come back to base one and say, okay, how much is because of that faith rather than the wonder of what's been produced? We're going to continue to multiply that exponentially because of our faith in the moment.
When you have that dream and the inspiration is there and you're fired up for it, that's easy. If you have a goal in mind or even some runs under your belt, the dream's alive. Banning, probably for you on this, if we go for this, not what happens when the dream dies, but what happens when it's hard in the dream. So in the 1990s, Jesus culture was not a movement, but more these gatherings. It was exciting. It had momentum. You talked to yesterday about the 1948 penny. There's amazing things happening. Somewhere in there, you went from that to being a church planter on the same word. I'd imagine the excitement levels sometimes differ between the grind of building local and the hype of gathering people for encounter in that moment. Can you tell us less about the movement versus church, but more internally in yourself? What had to change from you being someone who had this big, realized external movement dream to being a local church pastor? What did that reveal in you?
What great question. I'm a high need for significance guy. I like being significant. I want to be liked.
You are deeply. I love you. And thank you for donating
Thank you,
5,000
Mark.
a year to Jeff's missions plan. I donated 5,000 a year from Jesus Culture.
Done.
10, it was 10.
Done.
10,000. But
We're going to talk afterwards. So going from like travel, conferences, arenas, all this type of stuff, down to the beauty and grind of the local church. I'll say this for me, it's everything for, this is going to sound so spiritual. Life is super short. It is a moment. We're going to stand before God one day. Yep. And all that will matter is, did we love him and do our job? So I'm probably more of an assignment guy, where like when I stand before God, he's not gonna be impressed by how many people came to some gathering or how many people bought an album or how many people. He's just, did you do what I asked you to do, and were you faithful with what I gave you? That's it. Nothing else will matter. And I think that I think in the Western church in particular, we have defined success. So filter America right now, but we are so enamored with numbers and we're so enamored with this type of stuff that we don't know how to like just go, I'm going to be faithful with what the Lord's told me to be faithful with, because I'm going to stand before him one day, and that's all that matters. Yeah. I'm not going to give account for Joel Osteen. I'm going to give account for whether or not I did what he asked me to do, and was I faithful with what he gave me. So for me, whether we go, whether we're in front of thousands or whether we're pastoring a small group of people, for me the issue is, am I being obedient and I'm being faithful? And if I'm being obedient and if I'm being faithful, then whatever the thing that I love, the crowds, and none of that matters, because when I stand before God one day, which is going to happen soon, like soon I will be before God. If I live another 50 years, I will be before him quickly. And when I stand before him, will he just say, well done. You did what I asked you to do. You did your assignment. And this is Paul. I'll be done with this. But Paul in 1 Corinthians, and he just says, I just wanted to know Christ and his crucifixion. And then he says in chapter 4 something, we just did our assignment. And so that's it for me. I'm like, and I don't get to choose my assignment. If he says your assignment is pastor a small church somewhere completely unknown by anybody, then that's what we'll go do. That's what we'll go do then, because I just want him. That's it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Right. So it helps you navigate that stuff. It helps you kind of navigate, because it doesn't matter. I just want to love him and do my job. And when I stand before him, that's all that matters.
You have such a unique ability to take complex things and just make it so simple. Love God. It's great. For yesterday, during your session for you and Marie, the amount of people that flooded this altar for hurt in their life, for miracles needed, shows that as pastors, we are not people who avoid the hard things in life. That we all have these amazing dreams, but there are these seasons and valley moments that require more than just dreaming. And on the other side of this, you probably have unique insights, but if I can get your mindset to go back to in the moment, where you didn't know if you had it. You have a statement that you've said before, I wrote it down, you said, God doesn't work from now forwards, he works from eternity back. When you were in that, all the promises that have been spoken, the words have been spoken, the future aspirations you had, when you're in that valley, how did you make sense of that?
I think some of the things that we learnt, Marie and I and our family and then the church, was that you see further in light. I think I said that. But you go deeper in darkness. And there are certain treasures that can only be found in the depth of darkness. I think God has some treasures there that can only be found in that. All we want to do is play in the light because we see further. But when we go through tough stuff, there's only one place to go, and that's down. And you find God in that. And so it is. We see further in light, but we go deeper in darkness. And for us, that fact that God works from eternity back became a revelation that was very strong in our journey. Because we work from now forward. Everything's about now or our vision for the future. But when you gain insight that God works from eternity back, he's going to allow things to happen that the enemy thought would destroy us. But God says, I'm going to use that to show you things and other people things that when you get that perspective that God works from eternity back, He will allow things to happen that the enemy thought would destroy us and cause it to be the catalyst for many people to get a perspective on faith even that we never had before. And so that's our understanding. I mean, for us, first surgery, they said you'll most probably die. You definitely will have severe complications from it, and it could change your life completely. And we had to make a decision to go for that surgery. The second surgery was exactly the same. We thought, well, we dodged the bullet, but let's go for it, because this is a but God story. And we won't die unless God's time is now. When you get that revelation, you can literally go through anything. And so, even when somebody said to us, they said, so you're a pastor, you're going to live or die. You say you hear from God. This was somebody in our church. And I just looked at them, I said, sorry. And they said, well, are you going to live or die? I said, that question I can't answer. All I can say is I can tell you what God said. It's for a bigger purpose. And when you get that, you can face death straight in the face and say, you have no victory, even if it's now. Because, oh, death, where is your victory? Oh, grave, where is your sting? And I think you get those revelations, and I would encourage everybody, go deeper and get a revelation about it. God called us to plant the church. God called us to He called us to go through this journey. In fact, Maria and I often say, we were entrusted with that journey. And when you can go through what's been entrusted, you can be trusted with more. And I think God is going to allow us to go through tough times so that we can be entrusted more for the kingdom. The key is don't react, respond in the darkness.
I think it's such a powerful perspective. It's almost the combination of those two answers. We think our assignment is the church, but sometimes the assignment may be the suffering, where you see this big interaction with God and Satan, and he says, have you considered my servant Job? Have you considered this? And we don't think it's an honor sometimes to be walked through this place of suffering and darkness, when in that moment it may have been God being like, have you considered my servant Paul? He can go through this and not once will he waver. He'll bring glory to my name through it. And so often we think the assignment is the healing or the growth or the church plant or whatever it may be, when the assignment for a season may be the valley, in order to bring a great glory to his name with the way that you walk through it. And I think in our day and age, we have to lead the way on suffering, on grief, on that, because the joy of the Lord is our strength, not on the mountaintop, but in all seasons of life. I think if we can do that as the church, there are people out there who have no idea how to make sense of suffering. And our God, He is the only one that makes sense of suffering. And when you walk through it, a part of being a thought leader or whatever else is on your Instagram bio, like apart from all that, if you can be a leader in this area, I guarantee people will flock to you, because every single one of them will walk through a similar valley.
Yeah. Your faith is not seen in your victory. It's seen in how you walk in its journey. And I think if we get that, we can take on anything. And it's kind of like people, Maria and I have talked about this so many times. It's kind of like, I am so thankful we went through it. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but I'm thankful for what God has done in us and what He's going to do through us for the future.
Pastor Mark, from where you are now, was there any indication early on in your call and your dreaming that this was something you wanted to create? Did you fall into it, into the multiplication, expansion, or is this something that was in your heart that eventually took root?
No, I had no idea.
It's great. It's good.
I stumbled into it, and I think the journey of obedience and faithfulness is you just take the step in front of you. Yep. And God's metric for more in the kingdom is not about networking and marketing. It's about, are you faithful with what I've given you? And if you're faithful, I think in Luke he says with little, with wealth, worldly wealth, and with what belongs to someone else, I can entrust you with true riches. I can entrust you with more. So I think, honestly, the journey of where we're at now is just in hindsight, the byproduct of just taking one step and seeing. I'd be lying to you if I told you I had a blueprint. In fact, when I had that encounter with God, I was weeping, but I wasn't weeping because I saw stadiums and nations, and I was weeping because I'm like, I'm done. Are you serious? You want to use me? The weeping was more why, not wow. Good. Now we say wow, but there was no, and I think that's why it's God. It's God, and and I just get to enjoy the ride. So absolutely, there was no premeditated plan.
In your journey, is there any major mistakes that if you would like to say that if you can avoid this one, if we could avoid something from your experience, what would that be?
I could tell a lot of
I
mistakes
just
that
need-
Christ made. Do you want me to share about King?
please.
I would love for you to start.
I mean, what I see from outside, the mistakes they're making.
While you talk, I'm calling Jemima.
Make a YouTube video, Banning, post it up.
Have I made mistakes? Oh. Why did I get that question? Yeah, lots.
We talked about it and it was best for you.
Honestly, I don't know where to start with mistakes. I think mistakes are part of the adventure if you are secure in the fact that God has called you to do this. He didn't call me because I would get everything right. He called me because I would keep walking. So people say, well, what if you miss God? What if you make a mistake? Well, he'll find you and then you get back on the track and keep going. I mean, this was never built on my track record of being able to navigate every decision perfectly, because if it was, we'd be stuffed.
Would you agree that so much of building, if you're building in here, for me, I find, there's a ton of mistakes, because some of it is I have to go get in the middle of it and get my hands dirty sometimes. I got some ideas. Let's go. I wonder if this, and we'll go get in it and then go, this isn't working like I thought. But the thought that I would know that out here without engaging this thing first, for me, sometimes I'm like, all right, guys, let's move into this thing.
Absolutely.
And I'll kind of let you know what I think about it when I'm in the middle of it.
Yeah,
and then I kind of get in the middle of it and go, hey, this worked well, or I think I'd maybe change some stuff.
The way I tell our team is most of this journey has been walked out, not worked out. And so you take a step and you're like, oh no, a bit too left, go a bit right. This is too slow, go faster, or this is too fast, go slow.
I assume some things. I assume some things that I'm like, oh, I think I made some assumptions, but I wouldn't have known that until I got into it and go, oh, yeah.
Yeah, and there's just so much that I love about the R&D of the kingdom. The R&D is, research and development is full of mistakes in the interest of developing something that is ultimately going to bless and benefit the people you had in mind. I think Bill Johnson says it this way. He talks about there's two departments in big companies. There's the production line, which has 0 defects. Anything that's slightly off is discarded. And then there's the research and development, where you're meant to make lots of mistakes, so you work out how to do this thing. I think the kingdom is more R&D than religion is product development.
You know what's crazy is I don't think you'll get there unless you deal with your insecurities. I think with leaders, when you have insecurities going on inside of you, where you're looking for what you're doing or you're looking for people's approval to be where you find your identity and your security. So like insecurity is that thought that I need Jesus and something else, people's approval or whatever else to feel good. And I think if you can deal with your insecurities, you're way more willing to take risks. You're way more willing to go, let's see how it works out. It didn't work out? Yeah, great. Because you've dealt with something going on there. But I find the guys that are the most insecure are the ones that they just do not want to not have perfection happening. And I think it stops you from actually leaning into some things.
Completely agree. On that, you said the other day that you had this moment where you transitioned from a preacher to a son. And I think from what I see across all great Christian leaders, it's not who has the blueprint, who's strategic. It's that intimacy that produces a security in them to do this. In your journey, how did you go from preacher to son? How do you know when you're drifting back into preacher world? Because the day we go through this week to week, doing that prep, getting back into that world, the expectations on you, do you know if you're going back from being a son to back to being a preacher by identity. How did you make that shift?
I don't know how to describe internal world with the Lord sometimes, but you know, there's in the Old Testament, they were only allowed to wear a certain garment that was breathable when they went into the Holy of Holies. The concept being sweat is not allowed in the Holy of Holies. I don't know how to describe it, but I can start feeling when I'm sweating. I don't know how to describe that. I can feel like, I'm starting to sweat right now. I'm looking for something other than His approval. I'm looking for something other than Him to find my identity. And so I wish we were more honest with ourselves, guys, around issues like our emotions connected to a Sunday. If your emotions are connected to a Sunday, listen, this is the raw, honest part. I find myself, I want to reach souls. I really do. I want to see people get saved. But my emotions connected to a number on Sunday has nothing to do with my heart for souls. If I'm really honest with myself and stop and go, what's going on inside of there? Why am I so up and down around a number on Sunday? Ultimately, you know what it is? I want people to like me. And it's not actually the people in my church. The people in my church, they love me. Well, the ones that stayed, they love me. But you know what this is the truth. I want Mark to like me. I want Mark to be impressed by me. And so when I sit down with Mark and he goes, tell me what's going on with church, how many going on? I want Mark to accept me by what I've done, right? And so when that thing pops up and I can feel it, well, I got to get before the Lord and say, God, thank you for revealing that to me. I still am looking for something other than you. I want people to be impressed by my preaching. I want people to, I don't need anybody to be impressed by anything. Like my identity is found in you and you only, and I don't need anything else but you. I am found in you completely. And so when that thing pops up and I can feel it, I just got to go before the Lord and say, Lord, I'm still looking for somebody to be impressed by me by a number on Sunday. I don't need anybody to be impressed by me. I just want you. So does that make sense? So I really try to pay attention to it. My wife will also let me know. There's that issue. I try to pay attention to that, in all honesty. And I try to not let, when Mark goes, hey, how's church going? I'm trying not to pad numbers. Or trying to somehow make it sound somehow, I go, I don't know what that thing is. Why is that thing in there still? I don't want that thing in there. Just, Lord, I don't need that in there, you know. And that's not Mark either, to be honest with you. I mean, Mark his church is 100 times bigger than mine. Like, that's not even an exaggeration, you know what I'm saying? But Mark doesn't value things like that. But does that make sense? Does that make sense what I'm saying? Yeah.
This is to any of you, why do you think we as pastors create those imaginary approval measuring sticks? And because we know that God loves us. The Father loves us. He approves of us. We know that. It's in our heads. Yet so often we still act in this way. Why do we create those measuring sticks?
I think insecurity is a big part of that. Because I was brought up like that. I always wanted everybody to love me. I wanted to love everybody else. But I've realized that insecurity demonstrates itself in two ways. It withdraws or it dominates.
Dude, that's such a good word. Wow.
So you find a leader that dominates everything. It's their insecurity. You find someone who's secure. You get into that presence of that security. No, everybody's accepted. Everybody can be who they are, and it brings the best out of you. So people say, are you ready to preach? I said, I'm never ready, but I'm always willing. So do I get nervous still? Yes, I still get nervous. But I remember that this is God's word, and so He's going to work through. And so I think we need to understand insecurity and then just remember that we all feel that insecurity. In fact, I teach on it and I say, you can never get rid of insecurity. But if you isolate insecurity, it won't isolate you. And so remember, we all feel that. You might see the projection of somebody that's stepping into their gift, stepping past and through insecurity, because every time, every day, every moment, I've got to challenge the insecurity. I remember making a hat. Hi, I'm Paul, I'm insecure. Because that's the first key to insecurity, is realizing you are insecure and you've got to step your way through it.
You just can't let it drive you. And that thing goes away. It's like two options that pop up. Oh, I can choose this or I can choose this. And the problem in the church with this is that we reward insecurity because it gets results. I mean, it gets results. And I think that we have to, as pastors and leaders, be honest with ourselves and each other and not just keep enabling. I'm going to make up a statistic, but if you interviewed 100 CEOs in America, 90 of them are trying to prove to their father, who's not even alive anymore, that they're worth loving. Right? Like that thing where they're just looking for the approval of their father, and that's the thing that's driving them, and that thing gets results. Yeah. It does. But we've got to go, oh, no. We're just driven by obedience. We're driven by love. And this is why we can look at the pastor with 50 and go, incredible. I guarantee you, if you have 50 people in your church, if I came to your church, there's something I would steal from you that you're doing really well. And so impressed by the faithfulness of God in your life, right? And I think that I love this, when we're secure, we will applaud and celebrate what Jesus is applauding, which is faithfulness. And, Paul can tell you this, some of the most dysfunctional pastors I know have large churches. And,
you're all senior leaders. I'm trying to bring this back to being spiritual. It's really hard. As senior leaders with pastors probably underneath you, if you recognize that in people, how do you disciple that? How do you get, because it's easy to identify it and say, just do this, or someone like you, Benning, who has maybe a unique relationship, that prophetic one with the Holy Spirit. Maybe not everyone resonates with that method. How would you disciple or tell someone to work through that?
How have you discipled me? He's asking you the question.
I don't want to dominate this conversation. These guys have these guys.
It's one of the signs of insecurity.
That's insecurity. That's insecurity right there.
I'm liking Australia less and less.
America needs Australia.
Guys, I think we have to define success. If you haven't actually done the work to actually define what success is, and I would say this, it is faithfulness and obedience, period, that's it. I'm going to celebrate in your life faithfulness and obedience. But here's the other thing. If faithfulness and obedience has to do with stewardship as well. So you've got to grow. Anybody in our environment, you got to grow. You got to become a better leader. You've got to become a better preacher. You got to deal with your inadequacies. You got to deal with your weaknesses. But that is a stewardship issue for me. It is not a success issue for me, if that makes sense. Like if you're going to be in our environment, you're going to grow. We have a passion to grow. You can't stay where you are. You're going to take the gift God's given you, and you're going to absolutely use it to the best of your ability. So for us, we are driven. But it's hard to describe the motivating piece. You know what I'm saying? I want our youth pastor to be driven, not so I feel better about myself because you got a big youth group, but because I want you to be the best you can at stewarding the gift God has given you from a place of intimacy that desires obedience and faithfulness. Does that make sense? So it's not that, some things may look similar. We're driven people. But I'm driven to be obedient, faithful, and steward well the gift that God gave me. I want to be a phenomenal preacher, but that's because I want to steward well what God has asked me to do, not because I want people to like me. And that's the difference.
In the 7 minutes we've got left, let's look at the dream that endures beyond us. And I'll go first to you, Paul. Obviously, Ben, you've said too much, obviously, already, yeah. See you later. Thanks. Let's thank Benning today. Yeah, no. You've transitioned in a really healthy spot. Church doing great. You've transitioned to your son, Luke. Can you tell us about that process? How do you pass on the dream? Which things do you hang on when it may not look the same under the person who's coming after? How do you not hang on too long? All that. How do you transition well and that the dream may live on?
I think transition happens all the time. All of us are transitioning. We have staff that need to transition. We transition through seasons. For me, it came down to realizing that across the body of Christ, in my worldview, didn't talk about transition.
Yeah.
Had no understanding of transition.
Yeah.
So with our board and eldership, all of our board are on our eldership as well. So we just began to talk. So I just posed the question. I said, transition isn't being done well. What do we think about transition? We should be talking about transition. Not that we were ready, I was ready to transition, but we started talking about it. And they came back and said, well, we know who it would be when that took place, and that would be Luke, which is our son. And I didn't want to mention that, even though we felt there was a real gift on his life and a grace on his life for that. But I thought because I was the father of that, we would actually talk about it as a team. And as they said Luke, then from that point, we knew who it was. So we decided that we would, in 5 years, transition the senior pastor mantle from us to Luke and Missy. And that would give us time to get ready for that and move towards it. At that time, I thought I'd have a lot more fuel in the tank because I didn't know cancer was coming. So we set a year and date, which was 2021 rather, sorry. And yeah, that's going back too far. 2021. And so that was 5 years' time that we would transition that mantle of senior leaders to Luke and Missy from Marie and I. And as I said, we thought we'd be doing well and prepared for that. So we had 5 years preparation. So in that 5 years, we gave more and more authority to them, taught them things. They were very responsive and so forth and so on. We didn't know 2021 would be the year the cancer would hit. But we already had 5 years of preparation. And so when we transitioned, there was not a blip on the radar. I think we don't transition because it's our security. I think we don't transition because we're afraid of what it would look like, but that comes back to us in our preparation for it. And so we've just seen God move, and I think we should prepare every one of our team, not just pastors, into transition mode. They should all be with a spirit of multiplication on them. How do we multiply what we're currently doing through others? Lifting other people to a place of authority, not just position in it. And so when we can do that, we can see the church actually exponentially grow. So all leaders should have somebody in their wing that's a 2IC, getting ready for that. And if we're just holding on onto our position, we're not really forwarding the purposes of God, because it's not about us and our security. So we've got to do it in every area. We've got to do it in leadership. We've got to do it in finance. We've got to do it in every other way. Talk about the big things that everybody doesn't want to talk about and say, actually, the greatest place of our calling is what we pass on, even more than what we accomplish and what we are.
Amazing. Great word.
Can I ask Mark about, am I allowed to be an interviewer for a second? Mark, we've been having this conversation because he's at that stage.
Can you turn that microphone off?
Yeah,
no,
totally.
Sorry.
Totally. Paul, I honor you. Because you're at kind of more the middle beginning stages of how are you wrestling with transition when it's far away for you, but...
No, I'm thinking about it all the time because you have to ensure that what you lead, if the next plane falls out of the sky and I'm on it, everything has to keep growing. And so it's not an age thing. I don't think I've ever witnessed a transition better than Paul and Marie to Luke. And Luke and Missy are doing such a good job, so proud of them. And these guys are just generals, right? Incredible. But with or without a storm or a crisis, you have to start thinking, not only who are you raising up, I think a lot of transitions fail not because you haven't prepared the guy who's coming, but you haven't prepared yourself. Wow. And so I've seen guys transition and then become control freaks post the transition because they thought about the next guy and what his new season is, but they didn't think about yourself and what your next season is. Good. And if you've got nowhere to go in the future, you'll always return to your past, and that becomes a bane in the hand of the person you've now anointed for the next season. So I think a huge part of transition, notwithstanding any storms that may come, is, well, what's my next? That's not a selfish question. That's a relevant question because that's often the reason they don't allow someone to stand on their shoulders and they grasp it from their corpse. It's because they have not thought through the next season of their life, and therefore it creates tensions on the other side of transition. So I have to start thinking through, for me, Okay, what does this look like at a different scale? I was inspired listening this morning at the scale we're going too slow, 10 Bible schools. I'm going to do that money, altar call, prosperity gospel thing next conference. I'm definitely doing that. But I have to start thinking, once we get to that level, where am I going? Because if I don't think that through, I will unconsciously relegate the transition issue because I don't know what's next for me.
Let's put our hands together. We've run out of time. Thank our amazing panelists, guest speakers, conference prophets, whatever we want to call them.